She walked out dressed for the night. I stayed behind and dismantled a future. If you don't like how I live my life, leave. She said it casually, like you tell someone to take out the trash. No anger, no fear, just confidence, because she was sure I wouldn't do it. I stood there in the quiet of our apartment, listening to the bass from her phone speaker, watching her adjust her makeup for a night I wasn't invited to anymore. Something inside me went cold, not broken, switched off. I didn't argue, I didn't raise my voice. I nodded once, like I'd just received instructions at work. Then she grabbed her jacket and left to go dancing with her best guy friend, already halfway gone before the door closed. That was the moment my life split clean in two. I'm not the kind of man people expect drama from. I'm steady, predictable if you want to be cruel about it. I build things, I finish what I start. I don't slam doors or throw words just to feel powerful. For 3 years that was enough for her, for us, or so I thought. Her name was Sarah. We met in college. She was light and motion, always chasing the next feeling. I was structure, gravity. She used to say I made her feel safe. I used to think that meant something permanent. After graduation, I landed a solid job as a software developer. She drifted, freelance art, waitressing, projects that burned bright and died fast. We moved in together anyway. I paid most of the rent, not because she asked, but because that's what partners do when they believe in a shared future. At first our life felt balanced. I worked long hours. She filled the apartment with color, music, unfinished canvases leaning against the walls, quiet nights on the couch, food ordered too late, her feet tucked under my leg while we watched something forgettable and felt complete. Then the nights changed. Girls' nights became weekends. Weekends became habits. She'd come home smelling like alcohol and smoke, laughing at something that happened hours before, already scrolling through her phone while I pretended not to notice how late it was. I told myself not to be controlling. Everyone needs space. That's what good men say when they're slowly being erased. The comparisons started next. Why can't you relax like my friends? Why are you always so serious? You're safe, Alex, but safe isn't exciting. Safe, the word sounded like a compliment until it didn't. Then there was Jake. He worked at the bar where she picked up shifts. Loud, confident, always performing. Shirtless gym photos, fake deep captions, a personality built for rooms full of people who didn't look too closely. She talked about him a lot, too casually, like repetition would make it harmless. I noticed how her face changed when his name came up, how her phone tilted away from me, how her laughter sounded younger when she came back from nights he was there. I didn't accuse, I don't play detective with people I trust, but trust erodes quietly, grain by grain, until one day there's nothing left to stand on. The night everything ended, I'd just come off an all-nighter fixing a production bug. My head hurt, my body felt hollow. I wanted rest, her the idea of home. She was already dressed to leave. Short dress, lipstick precise, energy vibrating off her like static. She barely looked at me. I asked if we could stay in, just once, said we hadn't really talked all week. My voice was calm, measured, almost hopeful. She rolled her eyes. Jake's DJing tonight, it's going to be fun. You should come sometime instead of hiding here. I told her clubs weren't my thing. That wasn't the truth. The truth was I didn't want to watch my girlfriend orbit another man while pretending it meant nothing. I said I felt like we were drifting. That's when she laughed. Not soft, sharp, dismissive, like I'd said something embarrassing. If you don't like how I live my life, leave. No pause, no regret. She grabbed her bag, already done with the conversation, already sure of the outcome. She thought I'd stay. That was her mistake. The door slammed, the apartment went silent except for the hum of the fridge and my own breathing. I sat on the couch for a long time, staring at nothing. I didn't feel rage, I felt clarity. I thought about the promotion I'd turned down because she didn't want to move. The weekends I cancelled plans so I could be home when she got back, just in case she wanted me. The way I'd shrunk myself to make room for her expansion. I stood up and started packing. Not fast, not emotional, methodical. Clothes first, books, my laptop, the watch my father gave me. I left everything that was ours. The couch, the table, the art on the walls. I didn't want anything tied to a negotiation. At 1:00 a.m., my car was full. I wrote a note on a scrap of paper and placed it on the kitchen counter where she couldn't miss it. You're right. I don't like it. So I left. No signature, no goodbye. I drove to a friend's place 2 hours away, slept on his couch, phone on silent. For the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel empty, it felt earned. She came home at 3:00 a.m. expecting a fight. What she found was absence. The next morning my phone exploded, missed calls, messages stacked on messages, confusion turning to anger, anger turning to panic. I didn't answer right away, I needed to hear myself think. When I finally picked up, her voice was sharp, offended. "What the hell is this, Alex? You can't just disappear, this is insane." I told her calmly that I did exactly what she suggested. She said I was overreacting, that nothing happened, that Jake was just a friend, that I was dramatic. Then came the pivot. "You're the stable one, you know that. I need fun, but I need you too." There it was, the truth, naked and unashamed. I told her I wasn't interested in being anyone's safety net. She called me insecure, then cruel, then selfish. She accused me of abandoning her, of throwing away 3 years over one night. I didn't defend myself. I said goodbye and blocked her. The fallout took weeks to reach me, drifting in through mutual friends who didn't know which side they were supposed to be on. She went all in on Jake, moved fast, burned bright, posted about freedom and new beginnings. Then reality showed up. Jake wasn't exciting, he was unstable, jealous when she asked for commitment, charming only when it cost him nothing. Their apartment turned into chaos, money disappeared, friends distanced themselves. I heard about the fights, the cops once, the excuses after. I didn't feel satisfaction, just distance. I moved cities, took a transfer, got a small studio with bare walls and clean air, started lifting weights, went to therapy, learned the difference between loyalty and self-erasure. The silence slowly stopped hurting. Then the messages started again. Apologies this time, late-night voicemails, tears, regret. I didn't respond. Desperation escalates when dignity runs out. She contacted my friends, my coworkers, even my family. Everyone heard the same version. She'd made a mistake, she'd learned, she needed me. What she really needed was stability again. I didn't owe her that. 6 months later, I saw her for the last time. At a wedding she wasn't invited to. She looked smaller, worn, like someone who'd spent too long fighting gravity instead of working with it. She saw me standing there, calm, grounded, next to a woman who wasn't loud, wasn't chaotic, just present. She tried to talk, tried to rewrite history. I didn't raise my voice. I told her my life no longer included her. That was the hardest thing for her to accept, not that I was angry, but that I was done. She walked away, I stayed. Some people think winning looks like revenge. It doesn't. Winning is packing your life into boxes while someone dances, convinced you'll still be there when they get back. Winning is leaving quietly and never needing to return. I didn't watch her leave the wedding. I didn't need to. I stood there for a moment longer, the noise of laughter and clinking glasses washing over me like something from another life. Emily squeezed my hand, not possessive, not territorial, just present. That mattered more than I expected. Presence is underrated until you've lived without it. Later that night, driving home under streetlights that blurred into long white streaks, I felt something settle. Not relief, not triumph. Closure is quieter than people think. It doesn't announce itself. It just shows up one day and realizes it no longer has work to do. For a long time after I left, I kept asking myself the same question in different forms. How did I let it get that far? The answer wasn't flattering. I stayed because I believed endurance was love, because I confused patience with virtue, because being needed felt dangerously close to being valued. I didn't want to be the guy who gives up. So I stayed while the ground shifted under my feet, convincing myself that stability was something you could provide alone. You can't. What no one tells you is that some people don't want peace. They want motion, noise, contrast. They need to feel chased by chaos to believe they're alive. And when you don't feed that hunger, they don't leave. They push you until you either break or disappear. I chose disappearance. In the months after the wedding, life didn't suddenly turn cinematic. No dramatic glow-up montage, just consistency. Mornings that started without dread, evenings that didn't feel like waiting rooms, work that mattered, sleep that came easily. Emily and I moved slowly, intentionally. She never tested my loyalty to measure my interest. never mistook emotional distance for mystery. When she said she'd be somewhere, she was there. When she had a problem, she said it directly. No triangulation, no audience. That was when I understood how warped my sense of normal had become. One afternoon, almost a year after I left, I ran into someone who used to know us both. Small coffee shop. Wrong place, right time. He hesitated before speaking, like he wasn't sure which version of the story I belonged to. "She's not doing great," he said eventually. I nodded, not cold, just factual. He told me she bounced between apartments, short-term jobs, apologies she didn't fully understand, the same patterns, different faces, always convinced the next situation would finally feel right until it didn't. I didn't ask for details. Some stories aren't yours to finish anymore. When I walked out of that cafe, the air felt lighter than it should have for such an ordinary moment. I realized something then that I wish I'd known earlier. Leaving doesn't make you heartless, staying too long does. People talk about abandonment like it's always violent. Sometimes it's just a man choosing not to betray himself anymore. I didn't ruin her life. I stopped sacrificing mine. And that's the part that still surprises people, the ending they don't expect. She told me to leave if I didn't like how she lived. I listened. And I built a life so full, so quiet, so solid, that her absence finally stopped echoing. That's not revenge. That's peace. Months later, I found the note. Not the one I left her. Another one, older, folded too many times, stuffed in a drawer I hadn't opened since the move. It was something I'd written to myself during the last year with her. No date, no context, just a sentence, pressed hard enough into the paper that the pen nearly tore through. If I just stay steady long enough, she'll stop running. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it longer than I should have. That was the lie I lived inside. I thought love was about absorbing impact, about being the shock absorber so someone else could crash without consequences. I told myself I was strong enough to carry both of us. What I was really doing was teaching her that my limits didn't matter. That's the quiet part no one warns you about. People don't respect sacrifices they didn't ask for, they just get used to them. Looking back, the warning signs weren't subtle, they were just inconvenient. The jokes at my expense in front of friends. The way she'd frame her freedom as bravery and my boundaries as fear. How every conflict ended with me apologizing for wanting clarity. I wasn't blind, I was hopeful, and hope when it's unbalanced can be a dangerous thing. The night I packed my things, I didn't feel brave. I felt hollow, like I was stepping off a cliff without knowing if there was ground below, but what waited on the other side wasn't a fall. It was silence. And then space. Space to hear my own thoughts without them being questioned. Space to want things without being mocked for wanting them. Space to exist without constantly proving I was enough. That space saved me. People asked later if I regretted not fighting harder. They meant well, they always do. But here's the truth no one likes to hear. You don't fight for someone who's already halfway out the door. You fight for someone who turns toward you when things get hard. She didn't. So I stopped. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Sometimes the strongest move isn't confrontation, it's absence. I never sent another message, never posted a cryptic quote, never tried to reclaim the narrative. I let the story end where it actually ended, not in chaos, not in a screaming match, but in a quiet decision made at midnight while someone else was dancing under lights that would eventually burn out. I don't know if she ever understood what she lost. But I know exactly what I gained. A life where love doesn't feel like endurance. A partnership that doesn't require me to shrink. Mornings without anxiety. Evenings without suspicion. And the unshakable knowledge that walking away didn't make me weak. It made me honest. So if you're listening to this and you're standing in your own kitchen right now, phone in your hand, heart in your throat, trying to convince yourself that being patient means being noble, hear this clearly. If someone tells you to leave because they don't want to change, believe them. Pack your things. Not in anger. Not in revenge. But in respect for the life that's waiting for you once you stop begging to be chosen.